Rosanella. Everybody knows that though the fairies live hundreds of years, they do sometimes die, especially as they are obliged to pass one day in every week under the form of some animal, when of course they are liable to accidents. It was in this way that death once overtook the Queen of the Fairies, and it became necessary to call a general assembly to elect a new sovereign. After much discussion, it appeared that the choice lay between two fairies, one called Serpentine and the other Paradami. And their claims were so equal that it was impossible without injustice to prefer one to the other. Under these circumstances, it was unanimously decided that whether of the two could show to the world the greatest wonder should be queen. But it was to be a special kind of wonder. No moving of mountains or any such common fairy tricks would do. Serpentine, therefore, resolved that she would bring up a prince whom nothing could make constant, while Paradami decided to display to admiring mortals a princess so charming that no one could see her without falling in love with her. They were allowed to take their time, and meanwhile the four eldest fairies were to attend to the affairs of the kingdom. Now, Paradime had for a long time been very friendly with King Bardondon, who was a most accomplished prince, and whose court was a model of what a court should be. His queen, Balanice, was also charming. Indeed, it was rare to find a husband and wife so perfectly of one mind about everything. They had one little daughter, whom they had named Rosanella, because she was a little pink rose printed upon her white throat. From her earliest infancy she had shown the most astonishing intelligence, and the courtiers knew her smart sayings by heart, and repeated them on all occasions. In the middle of the night, following the assembly of fairies, Queen Balanice woke up with a shriek, and when her maids of honor ran to see what was the matter, they found she had a frightening dream. "I thought," she said, "that my little daughter had been changed into a bouquet of roses, and that as I held it in my hand, a bird swooped down suddenly and snatched it from me and carried it away. Let someone run and see that all is well with the princess," she added. So they ran, but what was their dismay when they found that the cradle was empty. And though they sought high and low, not a trace of Rosanella could they discover. The queen was inconsolable, and so indeed was the king. Only being a man, he did not say quite so much about his feelings. He presently proposed to Balanice that they should spend a few days at one of their palaces in the country. And to do this she willingly agreed, since her grief made the gaiety of the capital distasteful for her. One lovely summer evening, as they sat together on a shady lawn shaped like a star, from which radiated 12 splendid avenues of trees, the queen looked around and saw a charming peasant girl approaching by each path, and what was still more singular, that everyone carried something in a basket which appeared to occupy her whole attention. As each drew near, she laid the basket at Balanice's feet, saying, "Charming queen, may this be some slight consolation to you in your unhappiness." The queen hastily opened the baskets, and found in each a lovely baby girl, about the same age as the little princess for whom she sorrowed so deeply. At first the sight of them she renewed her grief, but presently their charm so gained upon her that she forgot her melancholy, and providing them with nursery maids, cradle rockers, and ladies-in-waiting, and in sending hither and thither for swings and dolls and tops and bushes of the finest sweetmeats. Oddly enough, every baby had upon its throat a tiny pink rose. The queen found it so difficult to decide on suitable names for them all. Until she could settle the matter, she chose a special color for everyone, by which it was known, so that when they were all together they looked like nothing so much as a nosegay of gay flowers. As they grew older, it became evident that though they were all remarkably intelligent and profited equally by the education they received, they differed one from another in disposition, so much so that they gradually ceased to be known as Pearl or Primrose, or whatever might have been their color, and the queen instead would say, "Where is my sweet, or my beautiful, or my gay?" Of course, with all these charms they had lovers by the dozen, not only in their own court, but princes from afar, who were constantly arriving, attracted by the reports which were spread abroad. But these lovely girls, the first maids of honor, were as discreet as they were beautiful, and favored no one. But let us return to Cercotine. She had fixed upon the son of a king who was the cousin of Bardodon, to bring up a fickle prince. She had before at his christening given him all the graces of mind and body that a prince could possibly acquire, but now she redoubled her efforts. She spared no pains in adding every imaginable charm and fascination, so that whether he happened to be cross or amiable, splendid or simply attired, serious or frivolous, he was always perfectly irresistible. In truth, he was a charming young fellow, since the fairy had given him the best heart in the world, as well as the best head, and had led nothing but desired but consistency. For it cannot be denied that the Prince Mirliflor was a desperate flirt and as fickle as the wind, so much so that by the time he arrived at his 18th birthday there was not a heart left for him to conquer in his father's entire kingdom. They were all his own, and he was tired with everyone. There were things in his state when he was invited to visit the court of his father's cousin, King Bardodon. Imagine his feelings when he arrived and was presented at once to 12 of the loveliest creatures in the world, and his embarrassment was heightened by the fact that they all liked him as much as he liked each of them, so that things came to such a pass that he was never happy a single instant without them. For he could not whisper soft speeches to sweets and laugh with joy while he looked at beauty. In his own more serious moments, what could be pleasanter than to talk to Grave upon some lonely shade? Or while he still held the hand of Loving in his own. All of the others lingered near in sympathetic silence. For the first time in his life he really loved, though the object of his devotion was not one person, but 12, to whom he was equally attracted. And even Cercotine was deceived into thinking that this was indeed the height of inconsistency. But Paradime said not a word. In vain did Prince Mirliflor father write him, commanding him to return, and proposing for him one good match after another. Nothing in the world could tear him from his 12 enchantresses. One day the queen gave a large garden party, and just as the guests were all assembled, and Prince Mirliflor was as usual dividing his attention between his 12 beauties, a humming of bees was heard. The rose maidens, fearing the stings, uttered little shrieks, and all fled together to a distance from the rest of the company. Immediately, to the horror of all who were looking on, the bees pursued them, and, growing suddenly to an enormous size, pounced upon each maiden and carried her off into the air, and in an instant they were all lost to view. This amazing occurrence plunged the whole court into the deepest affliction, and Prince Mirliflor, after giving away the most violent grief at first, fell gradually into a state of such deep dejection that it was feared if nothing could rouse him he would certainly die. Serpentine came in all haste to see what she could do for her darling, but he rejected with scorn all the portraits of lovely princesses which she offered from his collection. In short, it was evident that he was in a bad way, and the fairy was at her wit's end. One day, as he wandered about, absorbed in melancholy reflections, he heard sudden shouts and exclamations of amazement, and if he had taken the trouble to look up, he would not help being as astonished as everyone else, for through the air a chariot of crystal was slowly approaching, which glittered in the sunshine. 6 lovely maidens with shimmering wings drew it on by rose-colored ribbons, while a whole flight of others, equally beautiful, were holding long garlands of roses crossed above it, as to form a complete canopy. In it sat Fairy Paradime, and by her side a princess whose beauty positively dazzled all who saw her. At the foot of the great staircase they descended, and proceeded to the queen's apartments, though everyone had run together to see this marvel, till it was quite difficult to make a way through the crowd. And exclamations of wonder rose on all sides at the loveliness of this strange princess. "Great Queen," said Paradime, "permit me to restore to you your daughter Rosanella, whom I stole out of her cradle." At the first transports of joy were over, the queen said to Paradime, "But my lovely 12 lovely ones, are they lost to me forever? Shall I never see them again?" But Paradime only said, "Very soon you will cease to miss them," in a tone that evidently meant, "Don't ask me any more questions." And then, mounting again into her chariot, she swiftly departed. The news of this beautiful cousin's arrival was soon carried to the prince, but he had hardly the heart to go and see her. However, it became absolutely necessary that he should pay her his respects, and he had scarcely been 5 minutes in her presence before it seemed to him that she combined in her own charming person all the gifts and graces which had so attracted him into the 12 rose maidens whose loss he had so terribly mourned. And after all, it is really more satisfactory to make love to one person at a time. So it came to pass that before he knew where he was entering his lovely cousin, entreating his lovely cousin to marry him. And the moment the words had left his lips, Paradime appeared, smiling and triumphant, and the chariot of the Queen of Fairies, for by that time they had all heard of her success, and declared her to have earned the kingdom. She had to give a full account of how she had stolen Rosanella from her cradle, and divided her character into 12 parts, that each might charm Prince Mirliflor, and once more united might cure him of his inconsistency once and forever. And as one more proof of the fascination of the whole Rosanella, I might tell you that she even defeated Serpentine, sent her wedding a gift, and was present at the ceremony which took place as soon as the guests could arrive. Prince Mirliflor was constant for the rest of his life, and indeed, who would have not been in his place? As for Rosanella, she loved him as much as all the 12 beauties put together, so they reigned in peace and happiness to the end of their long lives.